I'm going to talk to you about VR for the masses. Here we go. My name is Yannis Bolman. I'm the CEO of Little Chicken Game Company. These are my two boys. It's quite exciting to think of all the future possibilities they will experience with VR. I'm an artist at heart. I love drawing, and these are basically my two favorite subjects, monsters and women. No special connection there. And I also love all the creative possibilities that software nowadays gives you. For example, I created this with ZBrush, again, monsters. And I really like where we're headed now with VR. And actually, all these things that we are used to do in 2D are now slowly being able to be done in VR. Medium is one example of this. It's a sculpting tool for VR made by Oculus. These are some of the doodles I did over the past couple of weeks, basically. And it's really cool to see, because all these creations took maybe 2 to 3 hours, whereas in normal software it would take me maybe days or even weeks to get this kind of detail done. And it really exemplifies the directness of creating stuff in VR. I'm also really excited for this software. It's Quill, also by Oculus. Just a little example of what I created using a Quill. Is there any sound with this? So what Quill basically gives you is an unlimited canvas that stretches out indefinitely to all directions. And it really allows you to create art really directly. So I started out doing this little octopus guy, and basically everything I came up with I could just draw immediately, and basically created this whole scene over the course of a few days, actually. I think in a normal software this would take days, even weeks to create by a whole team probably. And this was just instant, basically, and it really showcases the power of what you can do in VR. And as you can see, the scale that you can work with, it's really unbelievable. So I think we're going to see a lot of exciting things, especially for creative folks with VR. As I said before, I'm from Little Chicken. We're a Dutch game development company. We're about 20 people strong. This is us at one of our summer trips. We also take our karaoke very seriously. We like to have some fun with while developing games. And this is just a short overview of the things we did in the past years. Our background has always been doing work for hire for different companies, advertising firms, and such. And we also worked on serious games, and also tried to do our own productions, basically. And that's where we're heading a bit more for the coming years. So we're trying to focus more on creating our own stuff. This is basically our mission statement when we create game. We always keep this in mind. When we play, we feel free to experiment, free to learn, free to fail, and ultimately transform ourselves. And of course, we're here for VR, and we've done quite a few VR productions over the year. Just some showcases. We did this for Vitens, which is a Dutch waterworks company, basically showcasing the processes that water goes through when being cleansed before it comes out your tap. And it really allows the players to experience firsthand what happens. Another thing we created for ING Bank in the Netherlands, which is basically a big software infrastructure company, if you will. The thing is, their engineers, it's harder and harder for them to keep track of the software landscape that they have. All these systems running over many years, and they have legacy problems. So there are just a few guys who actually have an oversight of the whole system. So for that, we basically transformed their infrastructure into a city, so they can see their city as the buildings actually represent the different systems, and you can see the data traveling between the different buildings. And in VR, it really helped them to get a better view of the whole chain that they have of the software. And like I said before, we're also working on our own projects. Beanbox VR is one of these things that we're currently working on. It's a music making game in VR. So we're developing it now. We're talking to Sony to have it launched on their platform. I'll just show you a quick movie to see what it's like. So our premise is basically everyone can create music in VR, right? So you put up these samples in a grid. Can we get just a bit more? So by putting in mirrors, you can create loops. You can split up the beam and add another layer. And basically with a really simple interaction create quite elaborate music pieces. As you can see if you take it all the way. So what we really want to do in VR is basically make you feel like this guy, right? Standing in front of a big crowd, taking them on a musical journey. And you can do that because in VR you really feel like you're there. And this is actually one of the biggest VR productions that we did. It's called Albert Heijn Dino's. Albert Heijn is a Dutch retailer. We worked on it with TBWA, advertising firm, Samhout Media, and we did all the development of the VR and AR stuff. Just a quick movie to show you what it's like. It's in Dutch, but you'll get the general idea.
In deze app kun je dino's in VR en AR bekijken. Dat betekent dat je ze echt tot leven kunt laten komen. Hoe vet is dat? Wauw, zo cool dit! Ja, ik zie er een. Daar! Wauw, kijk, deze vliegt. Dit is nou een pterosaurier. Holy moly, wat is dit gaaf.
So this launched in the Netherlands in last summer, and it was actually one of the biggest VR campaigns in the world at that time because basically we supplied every kid in the Netherlands with their first VR experience, and we also added AR to that and made basically a complete package for everyone because that's the thing. We worked for Albert Heijn, a Dutch retailer. They have stores all across the country. And we had to make sure if we added our app to this game that everyone who would go to the stores would be able to experience it. So the IP is a combination of Freek Vonk together with Dinos. Freek Vonk is like you can call him the Dutch Steve Irwin. He's this really excited guy who talks about nature. He has his own TV show for kids and every kid knows him. And combined with Dino, it's a really powerful combination. And the whole ecosystem was basically started with Albert Heijn, who has quite some reach in all of the Netherlands. Like I said, they're everywhere. We combined it with collectibles, so you would go to the groceries, do your shopping, and you would get these stickers to collect. And that would drive people back to the stores. And at the same time, we enriched that whole experience using VR and AR, basically. So we added augmented reality, like you saw in the clip just now. You would be able to take some shots with the dinos, put them on your shoulder, or have them running around on the table. And that was really cool for the social experience because you could share all these pictures. And also we added VR to it. And that was quite a challenge, and that's I'll tell you a bit more about that later. It was quite a challenge because we had to make sure that it ran on every phone of every customer, basically. And the kids loved it. They went wild. They were crazy. They were standing in front of the stores, asking everybody for the stickers. And like I said, we supplied almost all kids in the Netherlands with their first VR experience, and that was quite a feat. So just some bullet points. VR and AR, we decided to go not just for video because we really wanted to have interactivity. We also wanted to make sure the file size of the app would be below 100 megabytes, so it would be quick to download. We had to support a lot of Android devices, which is quite a hassle. And also low specs. iPhone 4 is it's quite old hardware by now. And we also made sure we had automated continuous delivery and made sure we had to check everything before we actually launched. Because we didn't really have a time for soft launch or anything like that. It had to work right out of the box. So we used Unity 3D as our main engine. Added the Google Cardboard API, or at least that's what we started with. Added some analytics and used Vuforia for the AR implementation. We also expanded the app later on with hamsters because obviously hamsters and dinosaurs match. Well, not really, but it's the mascot for the retailer, so it was quite a cool addition. This is me with my son taking some selfies with the hamsters. But we learned a lot of lessons during that during the development of this app. A quick overview of the things I'll tell you about. We had to optimize for performance, had to make sure the sense of scale was right. We also had to design the interactivity specifically for the platform. And we had to make sure the impact of the experience was right. And that was probably one of the most important things. So first up, optimizing for performance. We had to make sure it ran on all these phones. And that's quite a thing. We used Google Cardboard initially because the retailer would be able to supply this to all their customers. It was a bit of a problem because back then the Google Cardboard API was really bad. Actually, it was quite a shitbox. And why was it bad? Because many phones were not supported. It didn't take the screen size into account, so that if you would put them into your Google Cart, and you would get nauseous, you would get cross-eyed, all these things. It had bad support for iOS, too much overhead, all these systems running that we didn't really use for rendering our content. It also used a render to texture option for the shaders for the two eyes. And we had little to no control over the field of view and the scale. And these are quite important things in VR. So the end result was a lot of people getting nauseous and having a bad experience. So we tried to work on that. First thing we did is reduce the draw calls as much as possible. If you guys worked at Unity at all, you probably know this. This is one of your main goals, to optimize your app. We built our own custom rendering pipeline. And also we made every environment unlit. So that basically means there's no real lighting going on. Everything's part of the 3D model. Also no real-time shadows. All these things that you get on these modern-day PC and console games are really heavy if you have to run on an iPhone 4, for example. So we really had to optimize for that. We faked the 3-point lighting, basically, because we wanted to have a scene that looked cool, and the dinosaurs had to be convincing, right? So as you can see here with the shader, you'll see some of the bounce light on the belly of the dinosaur, some overhead light, and some fake shadows. And it really gave a sense of a believable scene. And that was really important for us. Another thing we did was optimize the animations, because most of the time when you have a walking creature, you'll create an animation for it walking straight, turning left, turning right. But we didn't have the file size for that. So basically what we did is make the dinosaur one big IK chain. So if you pull its head, it would go to the left or to the right. And we only had to, or actually one walking animation straight on would suffice for that. So that helped us optimize again. And in this way, we were able to put 20 dinosaurs with their environments in this app, in VR and AR, basically. So another thing which was quite important was the sense of scale. So you probably have this experience where you, if you guys have tried VR, especially with 360 video, you put on the glasses and you feel like you're an ant, right? Or the other way around, where it feels like you're looking into a really small box. That's all part of getting the scale right. Sorry. So first thing we did is create in the environment some reference for the players, like adding trees, rocks, stuff people know, because nobody really knows how big a dinosaur is supposed to be in real life. And also the thing we had to consider was basically your VR set is like a window into the virtual world, right? So there's some things to consider. First of all, there's the pivot point of your neck. Most of the time you'll have a VR experience where they just pivot the two eyes, but actually in normal life or in real life, if you turn your head, your pivot point is just below your neck. So you have to take that into consideration. Also, the distance between the eyes is quite important. On average, it's about 6.2 centimeters. So those two metrics combined really give you the ability to set the scale of the head. If you scale these 3 points up, you'll get a bigger head, and if you scale them down, you'll get a smaller head. And that's basically what we tried to do, to get it just right. But then again, when we did that, we also noticed that the 3D effect wasn't quite as exciting as we wanted it to be. When we have this dinos running towards you, we really want to have that sense that it's dynamic. And you probably know the same effect when you see these 3D movies. After a while, you just forget that it's 3D because it's not really that much of an effect. So we basically we sort of enhanced the field of view a bit and compensated for that with a bit more dynamic perspective. But in order to still feel right, we had to create a bigger head. So these two things combined really gave us a sense of scale and a dynamic walking dinosaurs, basically. So another thing we considered that our target audience was about 6 years old on average. So we dropped the height of the camera to about a meter. So most of these kids would have an actual feel that they're at the right size when staring into this VR scene. We had to design for the platform, right? We had it running over mobile phones. Most of the time it would be downloaded over VR. So that meant no movies, which is quite an upside for us because we didn't have these blurry movies. We could have sharp graphics. We could keep the file size down. Another thing we also considered was the interaction, because we used gaze interaction. We had no buttons on the Google Cardboard, so every button we would have would be at the bottom of your screen. So whenever you looked around, you would have a screen free of clutter, no buttons, and etc. But you would always be able to look down and navigate through the app, basically. So we had to make sure if there wasn't a button that we catered for that. If there was no gyroscope, you would be able to just see it on your regular screen. And we had to make sure that if your screen was really small, an iPhone 4 doesn't compare to a Note 7, for example. It's about twice the size, but they all had to have the same experience. We also did a quick performance test during startup just to make sure what kind of phone you have and that the app would run at its optimal speed, so we could downgrade some of the details if you have a really low spec phone. All these things really helped us to work on the impact of the experience, and I think that's really the powerful thing of VR. You probably know this picture. The minute you put on these glasses, you forget the world around you, and the most exciting things could happen around you, and you won't even notice. It's really about the magic of the experience, and I think it's about seeing versus actually being there. And also, it's really all about you at this point if you put on these glasses. And another thing to consider is that a lot of people experiencing VR, they're really first-timers, so you have to cater to that, right? You have to make sure they don't get nauseous, because we want these first-timers to come back. So just a peek into the future of the things we have to solve with VR before we can actually have it mass adopted. I think there are a few things to consider. I'll skip over this one. Just quickly, I think the resolution is one of the biggest things to have it believable. If you see these pixels up close to your eyes, that's something that's really annoying to most people, so especially first-timers as well. The field of view has to increase. People are already working on that, but I'm not sure everyone really wants this big chunk of plastic on their head. The computing power has to go way up. The hardware has to be more friendly, more light, because it's really still really cumbersome. And of course, we have to really increase the social element. Facebook already showed their first ways of doing this with their avatars. And another thing, just a peek into the future. We all know 360 video, but I'm really excited about this technology by Hype VR. It's called volumetric video, which actually combines 360 video with 3D data. At this point, it's still very much a prototype, because a 30-second clip will now give you about 2 terabytes of data. And obviously, that's still not feasible with the current bandwidth we have at the moment. But it really allows you to walk in real time within every area that you film in this way. But it's definitely something for the future. So just a final thought for all you developers out there. It's really about having the responsibility to make sure that the first-timers have a good experience. So we need all these people that experience VR to come back and keep continuing to come back, because this medium needs to grow, and it's up to us to get the people back. That's it. Thank you, guys.
I will ask them, you know that. This is the risk you play by not asking questions first. So I think you've hit on some really interesting things, particularly this responsibility. I know the joke, but there is a real responsibility. So how do we get people to understand that you kind of get your sea legs when you've been using your own VR stuff for a while. You kind of get used to it. I know I'm quite comfortable playing a couple of hours in VR and I don't feel bad, but I've got a strong stomach, that's all right, and that kind of stuff. And I also know some people, like Torsten, who runs the Maze, spent 48 hours in VR. So we know that you absolutely, and it's comfortable, and and it's okay. But if you do it for the first time, and somebody makes a game that's got some issues with latency, or someone makes a game that's got some issues with the way it's drawn, it can be quite a bad experience for them. How do we encourage developers to avoid making those mistakes?
Well, I think first up, we have to share all the lessons we learn. We have to make sure that the things that work, that all the people developing VR know these tricks, basically. And I think there's been quite some talks on VR here at Casual Connect that actually talks about the same things that help us as developers to have this good experience for your users. So it's about sharing the knowledge, basically.
And to be fair, I mean, let's face it, over the last sort of 3-6 months, the performance has increased so much. And I think that I don't remember the last time I played a game where I really felt woozy. Without playing it a bit too long. Again, when you play something like Eagle Flight, and you just think, when you first put it on, you think, oh, this is going to make me feel rotten. But actually, you feel amazing, don't you?
If done right, it doesn't even matter. You won't even notice. But that's the thing. You have to make sure that the users have some sort of handhold when they put on these glasses, right? They need some sort of reference because their body isn't moving and the whole world is moving, so you need something. It's like sitting in a car. If you're in a car and the world moves around you, you're okay. But if you're floating in midair and going every direction with no reference basically directly around you, you get lost and you get nauseous. And
I love the fact that you can, I've forgotten the guy, there was a paper presented a couple of years ago at GDC about using a fake nose.
Yeah, it was just in the talk the other day. Yeah.
It was a great talk. Just by the fact that it was a fake nose, you didn't notice it was there, and it made a huge benefit. But actually, I think let's move on, because I think there's this. We are seeing tremendously good content, and we are seeing some games that are becoming, moderately profitable, and that's fantastic. But I also think what you're pointing out is really interesting as well, because the scope for the skill sets that games people have, particularly in VR, is absolutely starting to become demanded in these other places.
Yeah, and the thing I'm most excited about is that next to games, there are a lot of, we'll call them tools, being developed at this point that really open up a whole new medium for us as creative folks to really create 3D content or sculpting, modeling, painting in all new ways that we couldn't think of before.
And also I think, again, maybe it's my experience when I was doing PlayStation Home, it's like we learned some things about the way people navigate in a virtual world, particularly like architectural design, in a space, and how you would want to walk in characters to somewhere rather than necessarily pull up a menu for something. Yeah. And I think it's kind of fascinating kind of lessons that we as industry designers, developers, or etc., can then feed back into our other games.
Yeah. It's definitely a whole new language that we have to learn as designers, basically. And it's really exciting because, everything's still possible.
Yeah, and whether it's a head-mounted display or something that shoots, light into our retina or whatever it might end up being, it's interesting stuff. I'm still asking questions now. So we're going to get a microphone to you, though.
So I'm curious, you said you did gaze only and no buttons, and was that, and Cardboard has a button, but I know it didn't work with some of the very earliest phones that didn't have the magnetic detector. Was that the reason you did that, or?
Well, it's basically down to the cost, because the retailers had to buy a lot of these Google Cardboards, and they
got
the cheapest
the really
option.
cheap ones that didn't even do a button.
Without the buttons,
Interesting.
And even so, I think many first-time users don't even realize there's something there.
Mm-hmm. But are you happy with? I mean, there's always that trade-off between reaching lots of people but having less functionality versus if you would, restrict it to, slightly more recent phones. Did that, in hindsight, was that the right decision?
I think so, because it was really about reaching everyone, or as many people as possible. And that's especially Albert Heijn, a Dutch retailer. Everywhere in the country, they couldn't afford to cut out, let's say, 50% of their clients.
Very good.
So we had to, basically cater to everyone.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Actually, I want to expand on that one a little bit more, because one of the comments you made about the size differences. Yeah. Presumably you're just getting aspect ratio. How do you know what the physical size of the screen is? Are you having a massive lookup table, or Practice?
So there's a few tricks you can do. Beforehand, you just, the app can read out the screen resolution and basically scale the distance of the eyes according to your screen size.
Right.
That's one of the things the Google Cardboard API didn't do back then, so we had to do it for ourselves, because otherwise it would be totally different on a Note compared to an iPhone. But if the distance is the same, the experience is largely the same. So these are just a few tricks you can do.
Yeah, so that sounds like it could end up being a nightmare if you wanted to get really, really precise.
Well, actually, our developers had a really good trick so that it worked out of the box for every phone after that. So you just get the screen resolution, do some math, and end up with the right distance between the eyes.
The power of maths.
Yeah.
So were there any more questions? So I think if that's the case, I'm going to thank you very much.